Hello, movie nerds, and welcome back to Cinematic Sarcastic, podcast that talks all things movies and television. I'm Natalie, and I'm your host. On today's episode, we are going to talk about Five Nights at Freddy's. Definitely wanted to get to it before Halloween, because I know that this is probably going to be one that people are going to want to watch around Halloween season, if not on Halloween. Though I will say probably the majority of people that really wanted to see this one probably already have. So Five Nights at Freddy's, for anyone who is unaware of this franchise, it is an older video game franchise. I say older, but really I want to say that the first game came out in 2013, 2014, somewhere around there. So yes, older, but not super old, not like Pong era old in terms of video games. This is a franchise that I am familiar with because I do game, but it is not like a video game that I have played. I certainly would not ever consider myself like a diehard fan or anything. I kept up on the lore mostly, honestly, because Five Nights at Freddy's reminds me a lot of a place I used to go when I was a kid. And so I kind of was more interested in the lore side of things, the story side of things. So for anyone that is roughly my age, most people will recognize one of these, but a lot of people will probably not recognize the other. So the majority of people, I think, are familiar with Chuck E. Cheese because Chuck E. Cheese is still around, and it is one of those sort of showtime kids play places that people are mostly familiar with, and it has the mouse mascot, but it has the animatronics that are similar to Five Nights at Freddy's. But I grew up going to this place called Showbiz Pizza Place, which super reminds me of Five Nights at Freddy's because the animatronics are like a bear. I think there is a fox and a rabbit and something like that. So they're very similar. So anyway, Five Nights at Freddy's is this horror video game franchise that has you play the security guard trying to just sort of survive the night in this broken down, Five Nights at Freddy's pizzeria place. And the animatronics are haunted, and therefore they try and come and get you. And so you spend the entire game just basically avoiding them, using electricity and stuff to make sure that they can't open doors or can't get to you and kill you. So Five Nights at Freddy's was definitely one of those movies that I wanted to see because I was familiar with the lore. But I have to say, after watching this one, I didn't think it was terribly bad, but I think that Five Nights at Freddy's is going to be one of those sort of niche kind of movies where if you are not a diehard fan of this franchise, it's probably not going to be the best ever movie that you've seen. So this one stars Josh Hutcherson, Elizabeth Lail, and Matthew Lillard. Those are the major players of the story. And then Piper Rubio plays Abby, which is the main character, Josh's little sister. And Five Nights at Freddy's, for me, it was not personally a win. I think, again, like I mentioned, if you are huge into the lore and stuff, I think this is going to be up your alley and probably something that you will very much enjoy. But I think if you are an average moviegoer or someone that just sort of knows about the games, knows the story of the games, but are not necessarily a huge fan of it, the movie in and of itself, if you take away the video game franchise and all of that sort of cult following, it's mediocre to me. I will put it this way. I do not really like horror movies or horror games. This is why I have not played the Five Nights at Freddy's games at all. I don't like being scared usually. My realm is more so the 80s horror films, which to me are mostly comical. The effects and stuff are not terribly frightening. But if you get into anything that Rob Zombie has filmed or stuff like The Hills Have Eyes, that sort of realm, that's not my cup of tea. I don't like gore for the sake of gore. I like horror that still sort of has a lesson or a story or something that's a little bit more fun, like Evil Dead. I like those. But video games, most of the time, I never ever play anything that is scary. I think I played Dead Space for 4 minutes and then I was out. I really don't like being scared really at all. So when I was playing The Last of Us, for instance, I mostly had to just phone a friend and be like, help me through this part because I'm too scared to like think straight and I can't logic my way around how to get through this section, you know, because I'm just terrified. So Five Nights at Freddy's is not hugely for me. However, the movie itself was not, in my opinion, scary at all. Like, I sat through the entirety of the movie without even having a single one of the jump scares like get me at all. Like, it's very sort of toned down, in my opinion. And a lot of it, there is like a lull. Yes, when you're in the building, when you're in Five Nights at Freddy's, like the animatronics themselves are kind of scary-ish, but at the same time, sort of not. Like, they don't do anything really that is that terrifying. And I honestly think that the majority of it comes down to that PG-13 rating. I think if they had kicked up Five Nights at Freddy's to a solid R, maybe this would have been terrifying even for me. Because I feel like the majority of the time when you see the animatronics doing anything that is terrifying or scary, you get that like jump cut to another scene right as they would be doing something horrible. You know, I think there is only maybe 1 or 2 scenes in this that are like moderately scary, not even scary. I wouldn't say scary so much as like maybe gruesome. And I don't even think that's the right word, but there is sort of one scene where you get a glance around the room at sort of the aftermath of some of the things that they've done. And then the very ending when they take down like the villain of the movie, if you will, that is sort of gross-ish, but not even totally. Like, I feel like a lot of this storytelling just kind of lacks that horror factor for me. I don't know. It seemed more like a drama than I would consider it a horror adaptation of Five Nights at Freddy's. I think it really, really needed that rated R in order to just like kick it up a notch and make it like truly terrifying. But other than that, this one for me was just not a win in terms of like horror adaptations. But I think, like I said before, if you are a huge fan of the Five Nights at Freddy's franchise, this one's probably going to definitely be for you. So those are my thoughts on Five Nights at Freddy's. I would love to know what you guys thought if you have seen this one. Subscribe if you want to join the Movie Nerd family, and I hope to see you in the next episode.